before his throne. I can't.
Hello, Radio Land. Welcome to another Dreammakers 365, an IntellectualRadio.com radio show. And you might be asking the question, what is this Dreammakers? Why Dreammakers 365? Well, I'll tell you why. We have three reasons why we are on the air every Monday night from 8 till 9 p.m. roughly. Number one, we want people to have a voice, to give a voice to the voiceless, where everybody who listens and anyone who is on this show as a guest like we have tonight, they will give information to those people who may appear and may be voiceless. Number two, we would like to discuss African American history. We have our Black History Person of the Week that we will feature on tonight. And if I had my way, I'd like to do that 365 days a year and not just during Black History Month, where we're given 28 days or maybe 29 days, depending on whether or not it's a leap year or not. And lastly, we would like to offer hope to people through the blessings of Jesus the Christ, our Savior. Being a man of the cloth, I must and I will talk about throughout some of these messages that we have. We will discuss and apply them to the life and the legacy of Jesus the Christ, the Son of the living God. Those are the three reasons. Our sponsor for these shows is Mr. Martin Casey, the president of My Fuller Beauty Incorporated. Without him, there will not be a Dreammakers 365 talk show. So we are glad again that you tuned in with us tonight. For our topic tonight, we will look at what is happening in the life of both our seniors and particularly our young people. We have some positive people doing some positive things out there. To my right, we have a positive young man that I was certainly blessed to be a part of coming into Intellectual Radio. Without him, God using him, Kelsey Wicks, I'm talking of, here in the Chicagoland area, sat in with him on few occasions as we tag team. And he has been very busy doing so much outreach and working with our youth, some initiatives that he has tonight that he will share with us. And so we're going to turn it over to him in just a little bit, right after we set some things in motion. One, again, will be our Black History Person of the Week. And then we want to talk about the issue. But again, he has some wonderful suggestions of how we can somehow attract and maintain and retain young people to get them on the right track. So again, we will introduce him officially later. Also, as we get ready, we're going to open up with a word of prayer, and then I will introduce or share our Black History Person of the Week. Heavenly Father, we again thank you for our producers, Wanda B out in the lobby area of this great facility here in these studios. And we thank you for Earl Winfrey, the other Winfrey, who is with us in the studio, who serves as our key producer. And not only this show, but shows throughout the day and even into the late hours of each day and weekend. So we thank you for them, and we ask that you bless them and help us tonight as we have a discussion on our show. Our Black History Person of the Week is Octavia E. Butler. Octavia Estelle Butler was born June 22nd, 1947, and passed on February 24th, 2006. She was an African-American science fiction writer, a multiple recipient of both Hugo and Nebula Awards. And in 1995, she became the first science fiction writer to receive a MacArthur Fellowship. Octavia Estelle Butler was born in Pasadena, California, the only child of Octavia Margaret Guy a housemaid, and Larice James Butler, a shoeshine man. Butler's father, however, he died when she was only 7, but that didn't stop her. She had a loving grandmother, maternal grandmother, and her mother raised her. But they raised her with some strict Baptist environment. Growing up in a racially integrated community of Pasadena, Butler experienced cultural and ethnic diversity in the midst of racial segregation. She accompanied her mother to her cleaning work, where the two entered white people's houses through back doors as workers. Her mother was treated poorly by the employers. From an early age, an almost paralyzing shyness made it difficult for Butler to socialize with other children. Her awkwardness, paired with slight dyslexia that made schoolwork a torment, led her to believe that she was ugly and stupid and clumsy and socially hopeless, becoming an easy target for bullies. As a result, she frequently passed the time reading at the Pasadena Central Library. And reading is very important, not only for young people, but for middle aged people and for seniors. It gives you knowledge. And we know that knowledge is power. Is that right? So she also wrote reams of pages in her big pink notebook. Hooked at first on fairy tales and horse stories, she quickly became interested in science fiction magazines such as Amazing Stories, Galaxy Fiction, the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. She began reading stories from John Brunner, Zena Henderson, and Theodore Sturgeon. At the age of 10, she begged her mother to buy her a Remington typewriter on which she packed her stories on two-fingered. At 12, she watched the televised version of The Devil Girl from Mars in 1954 and concluded that she would like to write a better story. Listen to that. She drafted what would become the basis for her paternist novels, happily ignorant of the obstacles that a black female writer could encounter. She became unassured of herself for the first time at the age of 13, when, well intentioned, her Aunt Hazel said, "Honey, Negroes can't be better writers." But Butler persevered in her desire to publish a story, even asking junior high science teacher Mr. Place to type the first manuscript. She submitted a science fiction magazine. After graduating from John Muir High School in 1965, Butler worked during the day and attended Pasadena City colleges at night. And trust me, where there is a will, there is a way. You can make it, but you've got to try different obstacles that are going to stand in your way, but there are always some options out there to help you. So as a freshman at the Pasadena City College, she won a college-wide short story contest, earning her first income of $15 as a writer. That was good money. In 1965, she also got the gem of the idea for what she would become or called a novel that was called Kindred. An African American classmate involved in Black Power movement loudly criticized previous generations of African Americans for being subversive to rights. As Butler explained in later interviews, the young man's remarks were a catalyst, leading her to respond with a story providing historical context for the subservient, or the one that's subservient, showing that it would be understood as silent but courageous survival. And so in 1968, Butler graduates from Pasadena City College with a focus in history. And as I conclude, Butler's rise to prominence began in 1984, where she talks about speech sounds, won the Hugo Award for a short story, and a year later, Bloodchild won the Hugo Award, the Locus Award, and the Science Fiction Quantum Reader Award for the best novelist. So by this time, Brother Earl and Brother Wick, she's on the mountaintop in her career. Isn't that a great?
Fantastic. Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, Butler traveled to the Amazon rainforest and the Andes to do research for what would become the Xenogenesis trilogy. The Dawn in 1987. Wow. Adulthood Rights, 1988. And The Imago in 1989. During the 1990s, Butler worked on novels that solidified her fame as a writer. Now listen to this. The Parable of the Sower, 1993. The Parable of the Talents, 1998. She became the first science fiction writer to be awarded the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation Fellowship, an award that came with a prize of $295,000.
Wow.
I had to say that. So her career, early stories, Paternity series, and the Kindred, all of this lasted from 1971 to 1984. Butler's first work published as Crossover in 1971. And in 1980, Butler published the fourth book of the Paternity series called The Wild Seed, whose narrative became the series' origin story set in Africa and in America during the 17th century. That's great stuff. So we are just so thankful that this woman came on this earth and did some wonderful things. She only lived 58 years, but it's not about how long you live, but it's what you do, the quality of your life. And trust me, she had a great quality about herself, and she struggled with her writing blocks and depression, partly caused by side effects of medications for a high blood pressure. So that's a whole nother show. As we look at medications, we have to be very careful with taking medication. So this became a problem for her. So she passes away in Lake Forest, Washington on February 24th, 2006, at the age of 58. There's a lot of contemporary news accounts were inconsistent as to the cause of her death, with some reporting she suffered a fatal stroke. But that's not important. What is important is the life that she lived and her legacy that she has left behind. She maintained a long-standing relationship with the Huntington Library and bequeathed her papers. So she gave her papers, including manuscripts and correspondence, school papers, notebooks, and all of that. So she had something, we thank God, that she left behind. Now, we're going to get ready to bring on our good friend, this man that has helped so many people with his work down through the years. But I want to paint the picture first. And I did some research, Brother Kelsey, before I introduce you here in a minute. And I researched and found out that there were 6 problems that's facing young Black America today, and how we can somehow look at your suggestions tonight as a possibility of using them, or you helping to train other people and sharing other information with other people that could be a benefit to help us as we fight this battle of juvenile delinquency and helping our young people in general. Here's the first problem. The first problem, Brother Kelsey, as we set the stage before I introduce you. Number one, we have a lack of family structure. 70% of our Black children are considered illegitimate. Now, what does that mean? That means that there's not a mother and a father at home. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to make it, but I'm just setting the record straight. That in 1963, Brother Kelsey, we only had 23.6%, Brother Earl, of our children living without both mom and dad in 1963. So what happened, and here we are in 2018, we have gone 23.6% to 70% of our children. They need mentors. They need help. Now, if they're not going to get it from daddy, then they need to get it from somebody in the neighborhood. Maybe somebody that has some experience out there that could teach them. And I'm going to tell you the truth about the situation. Growing up in Mississippi, my father was at home, but there were times when he was gone. But I was blessed to have had seniors in our neighborhood who were my role models. Could nobody young tell me nothing? The people that told me something were 65 and older. I listened to those people in Mississippi. So the same people in Mississippi, they're in other places around this country. Our seniors can tell us something if we would just listen. That's the first problem. Number two, we have some dangerous cities in America. One of them is Oakland, California. They need programs, Kelsey. And I'm not saying they don't have them. We need to look at how we can improve that. Since we are on intellectual radio, I don't know, somebody might be listening from California. Number two, Cleveland, Ohio. We need some additional programs. I'm not saying the ones you have are not working, but maybe we need to look at some other ones out there. Baltimore, Maryland. You have been plagued the last 30 years with what is called black on black crime. That's a problem. The other city, Detroit, Michigan, you lost a lot of jobs. You have an issue where we need to bring in more type of programs in those cities because those cities are suffering from gang violence. And I'm going to go ahead and add Chicago to the list. I'm going to also add Brother Earl, St. Louis to the list. I'm going to add Kansas City to the list. So there are other cities out there that were not on my paper, but I'm going to add it to the list. I guess you can do that when you got a talk show because it is what it is. Okay, because I've lived in Chicago. I've worked in Chicago. I have hung out in St. Louis, and they are dying like flies in St. Louis, Brother Kelsey. Number three, guess what else is on my list as we talk about having mentors and all of that and solutions and things you talk about, Brother Wick's suggestions. High abortion rates. It is estimated that 30% of abortions in this country are done by African American women. They need mentors, man. Something wrong. This heightened loss of uncounted lives percolates to reduce respect for life and has played its role in decreasing civility with which people treat each other. Number four, the victim mindset. Nothing holds an African American back more than seeing themselves as victim who sees everything as somebody else's fault without taking the deserved responsibility to such a significant degree that their victim status become their collective identity, a group issue. Lastly, before I introduce our wonderful guest tonight, African Americans make a sizable portion of people in prison. We commit, this is going to blow your mind, guys. Shouldn't be a shock, but we commit 52% of the homicides in America. We got a problem, Brother Steve. We got a problem.
No, when you say we, who are you talking about?
We as in African Americans.
African Americans.
Yes, sir. Earl, we got a problem, brother. Now, black children are 5 times more likely than white youth to be incarcerated. But I'm going to move on from there. I'm going to introduce our wonderful guest because I need him to have as much time as he can to introduce some great suggestions and initiatives that he's been working on. Kelsey Wicks has been an advocate for people and community of productive change dating back to the 1980s. So he's not some novice, inexperienced person. This man to my right is very experienced, and I know that for a fact. I know he don't like to be bragged upon, but my mama told me you don't brag on yourself, but let other folks brag on you. But I do appreciate you for your humility. You know, you have a lot of humility as well as Earl. I've learned a lot from Earl. Very person that's got a lot of humility, but this guy got about 5 studios up in here. That's pretty good, Earl. Thank God for you. Now, you have a lot of articles that you've published too in local community newspapers. And he's the author of C-228, a Constitution for African Americans, that was authored in 2016. Kelsey continues to work on projects that he hopes will bring productive change and civility among people. Brother Wicks, welcome to Intellectual Radio Dreammakers Talk Show 365. We're so happy to have you here with us on tonight. This man, again, is who brought me into the business of this talk show. Been a dream of mine for 23 years. And because God allowed you to help me, we thank God for you tonight. And you're doing some great things. So go ahead. You got the floor. Tell us about what you're working on now, Mr. Wicks.
I thank you for that wonderful introduction, Reverend Parker. And got an old saying, an old maxim, everybody's where they're supposed to be. So you're here because God wanted you to be here. I don't think it was so much he might have used me as a vessel, but God ultimately
thank you.
Wanted you to be here for
Appreciate
some reason.
That. Yes, sir.
And I just want to say before we get started, I want to offer up a few condolences to the victims of the horrendous attack on that synagogue in Pittsburgh.
Oh, yes.
Deplorable acts of violence, hate crimes. And that's one reason that I continue to do what I do, is because of senseless and cowardice acts like that.
That's right.
So our prayers go out to the families of that horrendous act in Pittsburgh that killed all the innocent people who were in a place of worship. They were in the synagogue worshiping.
Yes, they were.
And also our condolences to the Jewish people.
Yes.
Also, I would like to offer condolences to the people of that terrible plane crash over in Indonesia somewhere. I think it was like 160 something people.
Another one of those over there.
Yeah. Huh? So we want to, first of all, just acknowledge that we are caring people and that our prayers are with you. What I wanted to talk about tonight is an endeavor that was put forth here in Chicago, Illinois, and it spread out to Bellwood, Illinois. Bellwood, Illinois is the first place that allowed me a forum, a place to pitch, if you will. I presented this endeavor at the Bellwood school board meeting, probably a little bit more than a month ago now. And then out of that meeting came my association with the principal of a middle school, who allowed me to present portions of this presentation this past Friday, which would have been the 26th, I believe it was. Yes. Friday morning out in Bellwood. So we appreciate the city of Bellwood for allowing me to come out and present this concept, SHINE. Mm-hmm. SHINE is an acronym, SHINE, like you would shine your shoes, is an acronym that stands for Seniors Helping and Impacting Now. Senior citizens, what we want to do with this endeavor is we want to provide a new perspective on senior citizens. Senior citizens are the ambassadors of life and longevity. Evidence on its face. We don't have to put forth equations or have to theorize. Senior citizens represent life and longevity.
Very good.
Evidence on its face. Senior citizens, as a matter of fact, are living institutions. We're institutions. We're just as precious as some of the institutions that we pride in this country that we live in, our judicial system, our military system, our churches, our school, all of those are institutions. We, as senior citizens, represent living institutions. The institution of one of the most cherished institutions, Reverend Parker, that we have in American society, although it's not usually viewed like that, is the institution of freedom. Mm-hmm. Freedom, the concept of freedom is a working concept in American reality in this country.
Mm-hmm.
It is the foundation, basically, that allows us to be the country, the open country that we are. Think of freedom as a base, as a foundation
Yes.
from which all of the other freedoms that we have spring from. So you have here the foundation, freedom, a working concept that we actually implement into our way of life. And then from this base of freedom comes the other freedoms, the freedom of the press, the freedom of religion,
That's right.
and so forth. Another freedom that we have that springs forth from this working concept, this reality, is the freedom of education. And freedom of education was not always free. I brought some presentation materials here to show you what I'm
Okay.
talking about. Here in this book is a picture of a famous picture, as a matter of fact, of a boy, a young boy, looked like he might be 13 or 14 years old.
Yes.
He's called the Tipple Boy. And a Tipple Boy, he was working sometimes back in the early, it was photographed in 1908 by Lewis Hine,
Mm-hmm.
Hine, at the Turkey Knob mine. So he worked in some type of a mine, a coal mine or an ore mine.
Right.
And his function was to somehow help load or prepare the ore or the coal
Yep.
for shipment.
Mm-hmm.
The Tipple Boy. It was one of the famous photographs that was used, as a matter of fact, to argue against child labor law.
There you go. That's right.
The child labor laws were overturned as a result of photographs like this, and of course the various arguments that you put forth
Mm-hmm.
to try to defeat the child labor situation, having children work as opposed to being in school and so forth. So education was not always free. Then here I have another statistic that indicates high school enrollment by age, race, and southern states in 1890. In Alabama, for example, you have the total population of 15 to 19-year-old students in Alabama. Black, there were 81,558, and white, there were 93,000. But in public schools, number of enrolled in public and private schools in Alabama at that age group in public schools, you had zero number of black students in high school. You had 90 in private schools. For that same age group in Alabama, you had in public schools, you had 693 white students out of 93,000. 93,000, you had 693. In private schools, you had 2,508. So education was not always taken advantage of. Okay, in a sense, I guess you could say it wasn't always, the children did not always, let me put it this way, children did not always realize the freedom of education, because in most cases back then, especially in the South, at that age group, you were working on the farm, helping the family survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, we know now that there are laws that don't allow that. Children have to go to school, whether they're homeschooled or whether they're placed in a private or public school, as you know. Okay. But the thing about it is, if we're not going to guarantee and protect that freedom of education, then what's the sense in giving it to them? We have to be innovative. We have to give to our children our highest and best thought, our most diligent perseverance in making sure that they get this freedom, this protection of freedom for them is a reality.
Mm-hmm.
They can't do it, they don't have the experience. That's our burden. We have to do that. We have to come up with creative and innovative ways to make sure that we protect that freedom of education for our children. In Chicago, I know places where you can go and you can see 17, 18-year-old boys out there selling marijuana in shifts. Some in the morning, some in the afternoon, and some
They
at
got a
night.
system, man.
They have a system. And we have to stop that because somewhere along the line, we failed them.
Yeah, we have.
This is my yearbook, 1969, Farragut High School. If I turn to it and I have the page already here, you'll see where it says Kelsey Wicks, favorite subject, geometry. Favorite teacher, Mr. Blewett. That was my basketball coach.
All right.
Ambition, doctor. That is to say, medical doctor. Mm-hmm. Did I become a medical doctor? No. I never even came close to it. Why was that? Well, perhaps I didn't have the people resources. My mother and father were high school graduated. They held blue collar jobs. Things were difficult back then. Perhaps they didn't have the people connections to steer me in the right direction in my quest to becoming a medical doctor. Perhaps I didn't ask the right questions when I went to college. Before I really, if I did, I don't recall if I did, Pastor Elliott, Pastor Parker. If I asked if the school that I was going to attend had a medical school, as it turned out, it didn't. So there were various reasons why I drifted away from that initial ambition of becoming a medical doctor.
Yeah.
And that is what we want to do now. We want to close and we want to squeeze the gap on that. So that when children make a initial declaration of wanting to become a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist or a builder or an architect or a theologian or an educator or whatever the case may be, we can employ the interventions that will make sure that they don't drift.
Right.
Okay? So we're proposing a national monthly senior citizens lecture series whereby seniors, and you don't necessarily have to be a senior citizen, but we definitely want senior citizens to kind of like be at the helm of this.
Okay.
Have professionals, doctors, lawyers, teachers, educators, those group of professionals I just mentioned a second ago, come in and share with our students how they were drawn into their profession. What did you become a teacher because your parents were teachers and thus you became an educator? Was that the motivating influence? Was that the primary factor? What are the disciplines required for becoming whatever profession you're in? Real estate agent, whatever the case may be. Builder, electrician. Share with us, what obstacles did you have to overcome? Did you have anger management problems when you were in high school? And if so, how did you overcome those to become what you are now? Share with us, because as I said, I know that there's kids out there right now that need that guidance. They need that experience. And that's why I'm saying we want to recreate the image and perspective of senior citizens, because they have so much that they can share with us. And so from this National Senior Citizens Lecture series in public schools or private schools or wherever the case may be, after the lecturer presents, we want the students who are drawn to that lecture, and this is where it gets really interesting. We want them to fill out an intent of profession form. Okay. The form is going to say that on this day, I, John Doe, the student, hereby make a student commitment of my intent of profession in the field of whatever the case may be, medicine, to become a medical doctor, an MD. Then we want to take this form and we want to take it a little bit further. We want to call the parents of John, parents or guardians of John Doe, and say, hey, did you know John attended a lecture series on such and such date and showed an inclination and interest of wanting to become a doctor, wanting to become a lawyer. And we want to know if we can get you to sign off on this form. We want commitment on paper, not just verbal commitment.
There you go.
I want your commitment on paper.
It means
Okay.
much. It means much.
Of course, this society operates on paper.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so we want you, parent or guardian, to sign off and give us your commitment. We're going to help him get there, but we need your commitment because you're with the child more than we are.
That's right.
And then we want you to share this same interest to your friends and to your family. Let them know that your son or daughter has shown an interest in becoming, has chosen a profession, an initial interest in becoming whatever the case might be. Okay? If you have a church family, if you have a church, take this form to your church and let your church family know about it. Have some friends of your child, your son or daughter. Have some of their friends. In this case here, I had 4 friends sign off on this form: Jennifer Rivers, LaShawn Johnson, Liu Wee, and Maria Gomez. Make a good conversation piece 30 years from now. You know, you remember when you signed off on my attendant, okay? And when you go to church, have them. This form should actually be up on the church bulletin board. Okay. If I were a pastor in a community, Reverend Parker,
Yes.
where there's high crime, high unemployment, single family homes, and so forth, I would want to know in my immediate area, who are the children in my area, the students I want to know what the intent of profession forms. What have they chosen to become? And I want to bring that information into the church and share it with the community. And now what you'll have, if the student didn't realize before, the student by now certainly realizes that there are certain people who are supporting him or her. That there are certain people who have expectations, who are saying, we know that you can do it. We have faith in you. This form should be copied and put in the student's bedroom, should be pasted on the refrigerator and framed. You put it on the refrigerator, you know they're going to see it.
That's right.
2 or 3 times a day.
That's right.
Okay. But it's a constant reminder. That is to stop this drifting like I did. Okay. Constant reminder. Support bases. Employing interventions in there to stop and alleviate the possibility of them not realizing their aspirations.
Right.
Again, this is one way that we are protecting this freedom of education that was fought for so hard in this last 100 years. When they were students out on the farm, couldn't come to work because they had to work in the city or wherever they were at to help support the family. Now we're going to make sure, and they need to know this. They need to know. They need to see a picture of the Tipple boy. They need to read these stats and say, hey, did you know in Alabama in 1890, there were 0 number of black students that went to school and 693 or whatever the figure might be? Okay.
And that's something.
Yeah, they need to know that. You need to let them know to stop taking education for granted.
Yeah, don't take it lightly.
Don't take it lightly. Okay, and then we are also, the 4th thing that I want to talk about.
Go ahead, you got time.
How much time we have right now?
You have roughly what? We got about 15 minutes?
About 15 minutes, okay.
Yep, take your time.
I'm putting together a book, With Our Dying Breaths, a gift from seniors. Right now, I brought a sample book. You can actually see this book. It's kind of a thin book. It only has what?
What's about 35, 40
80,
pages?
80, yeah, and then some of it, some of it is blank
Oh,
pages.
yeah, a lot of them, yeah.
So really, and then some of it is it's the index in the back
about 50
and so
pages.
forth. So it's about on each page, it's probably got 3 paragraphs.
That's it.
3 paragraphs. So if I use the format right now for this book, for our book, our book would be complete right now. But because the Shine Endeavor, people are showing an interest in it. I went out yesterday, as a matter of fact, Reverend Parker, as I was telling you,
yes.
I went out to south suburbs here in Chicago, and also on the west and south sides of Chicago, and also in the south suburbs of Chicago, passing out information about the Shine Project. Had a chance to talk to people. They're very warm and open to the concept. Very warm and open. Okay, so it keeps the concept keeps evolving, and I don't want to rush to. I won't say rush to judgment. I don't want to rush to publication right now, because there seems to be other information that's going to be that we would want to put in this book. Because if we make comment, wisdom dictates that if we can make a good, successful book the first time, the following books have a greater chance of also being good on the market, being purchased. Okay, so we just want to be, we don't want to rush to publication, but the book is going to be called With Our Dying Breaths, a gift from seniors. And also, by the way, one of the things that we want to do with some of the proceeds from the sale of the book is to bury indigent senior citizens whose families don't have the financial means to bury their loved ones.
That's right.
And you've seen that happen. I've seen it several times in the last few years.
That's right.
Where the money wasn't available to have a proper burial for senior citizens' loved one. We want to use some of that money for our students. Some of the money from sales of the book, we want to use it from our students. We want to see if we, for example, we want to see if we can have inner city youth. Let's create excursions for some of our youth. How many youth? I never went to Washington, D.C. when I was in school.
See?
Some of that money from this book, we're going to have excursions, not probably during the most dangerous time of the year when the roads are icy and all of that type of stuff, but some maybe even in the summertime when school is out.
That's right. Or
students can still learn in the summertime, spring break, and let's use some of that money and have our children have the benefit of education and exposure to the nation's capital, where the legislation and laws that run this country.
That's right.
Are created. Okay. So we just need everybody to, instead of going out to dinner, go to dinner one less time out the year and purchase this book. This little small book right here, it's cost $12.95 in the United States.
Yes.
It costs $18 in Canada and $7.99 in London, in the UK. I'm sorry, in the United Kingdom, in Great Britain.
Yes.
England. And so we have the affordability. The book is going to be within our affordability. We're going to need to sacrifice. Everybody just do their part and just buy the book, okay? And we'll go from there, because we're going to need money to operate. And the thing about our book is it's going to be informative, because it's going to have the content and material that I'm talking about. That's now. Right. There's poems in there. There's going to be donated short stories in there from people talking about things that some rare instances that they have. I've donated a couple of them myself. So the book is going to be very diverse. It's going to contain a lot of information that we need to know concerning, for example, how we can best make sure that our children reach their aspirations without straying and going wayward. Okay. We need to do that. Right. Also, give you an example. If you guys really want to help the book, you can do a interview sheet. I want to put some of the interview sheets inside of the book. Publish some of those, for example, and I give you a questionnaire. When you were in school. This is for me. This is my interview sheet. It's 3 questions. When you were in school, at what grade level did you first give serious thought of becoming a doctor? My answer, I believe it may have been in the mid 1960s that the thought of becoming a doctor first occurred to me. I used to watch the old weekly television series, Dr. Kildare, Ben Casey, and The Fugitive, and I was intrigued by the profession and possessing the ability to heal others. Question number 2, did you inform your teachers, parents, and friends about your decision? Why or why not? Answer, I can't recall as to whether I did or did not tell others of my decision. I do remember meeting with school counselors regarding my situation at school and a vague recollection of what I planned to do after high school. I did not inform my parents, friends, or those belonging to the church, as the reality of becoming a doctor was so distant, and so forth. So it's 3 questions. It's 1 page. I'm actually going to give you one, provide you with one.
Yes.
I don't know if Earl would want to fill out one, but it's going to want to go into the book. I would like to share with people what Earl Winfrey does here at this studio. I don't know if a lot of students know what it's like to operate a studio like this. I think that would be something very insightful. The website, before I forget, is Shine One, like you shine your shoes, shine1.us, and a lot of what I don't have time to talk about now will be on that website. We have poems. We have a theme poem actually for the Shine Endeavor, an ode. I forgot exactly what it's called right now. We also have a mascot, a Shine mascot. It's a picture of arrows going in various directions, symbolizing the various roads that senior citizens have had to take during their life. I know that you've taken. Earl, you a senior citizen? Not yet.
Not yet.
I begrudge you on that. But also, I've contacted, as I indicated, this is a global. We want to unite senior citizens globally. This is not relegated to Chicago and Detroit, and we want to unite senior citizens global because senior citizens, we can do so much to impact the civility, the needed civility and mutual respect in this world, where it appears that the premium on life is diminishing.
What age are you speaking of, Brother Kelsey, as senior citizen?
Senior citizen, anybody over 55.
Over 55.
Anybody over 55.
Okay.
It's just a number, but
okay. I was thinking 65, but 55 is
55.
Still,
55,
okay.
65. You know.
Okay.
If you're 55 years old and you got 4 kids and 7 grandkids, to me, you're senior. You qualify to be a senior.
You're senior by proxy or something.
You've got the qualifications, and also I've contacted and going to continue to contact some more foreign embassies in Washington, D.C. You know, other countries have representatives of their countries who can speak on behalf of their countries. They're located in Washington, D.C. I have called some of those foreign embassies to inform them that senior citizens here in this country would like to network with senior citizens in their country, would like to network with students in their countries, would like to network with parents and teachers in their countries. So in a nutshell, I think that's about all I have to offer to give tonight. Again, the website is shine1.us, and hopefully, when you get there, I'll be making calls around the country again to churches all around the country, as I've been doing for almost about the last 2 weeks now. And again, I did it today, so I'll be calling. Okay.
Okay. So how can a senior get involved in this program again? What can they do?
What I'm going to be doing right now is I'm going to be asking pastors of churches, asking the church families to enroll their seniors, because, as you know, church members, particularly in Black communities, have to have tons of senior citizens.
Yes.
And we're going to ask, the Bible says, honor thy mother and father. And we're going to be asking the sons and daughters and nieces and nephews of their senior citizens, to support their membership in Shine. So when we come out with our book, not only are we going to be asking the senior citizens to purchase our book, we're going to be asking the senior citizens to ask their sons and daughters and nieces and nephews to honor them and support them by purchasing our book. So right now, we've only started since July. Rome wasn't built in a day, nor was it built by one person. That's basically all that's doing all the work right now. But hopefully we'll get some more persons actively involved with building this. I know I talked to, I want to mention Dr. Charles Brown yesterday. He's his church is over on Division Avenue and Chicago Avenue. And we want to employ, before I forget real quick, I think I mentioned to you, we want to, with this, there's some matters when you start talking about churches and like this. I'm not a pastor. Okay, I'm just planting seeds. So we're going to, this matter is eventually going to call on the clergy and pastors to take hold of this. And what I would like to see done is to have pastors, young pastors, like Dr. Charles Brown. He's a professor.
Yes.
He's an educator. He writes a column for The Voice, local community newspaper here in Chicago, and he's a pastor. Very qualified.
Yes.
Okay. We want him and other young pastors. Let's say, and I met another young pastor. I don't think he's a day over 30 years old that I met yesterday. Bring them in and have them head up this endeavor, and at the same time be counseled by the wisdom of the older pastors.
Right.
Let them grow into wisdom in their ministry. This would be a great opportunity for them.
That's right.
Okay, so I think that's about all I have to say.
Right.
You have any more questions?
I have a question for you too.
Okay.
Now, this is awesome. What you've shared with us tonight to the people listening on the radio. But I want to know what motivated you to do this. This is something that is needed. What motivated you?
I believe that I believe that God looks at a person's heart. And if he sees something in a person's heart that he can use, then he will inspire that person. The inspiration comes from God, in answer to your question.
Very good.
And I would like to believe that the inspiration was given me is because God saw something good in me. That I feel, and again, I feel very humble about being able to present this to the public. And I'm not proud or anything like that. I can, as the scripture says, I can decrease so that this endeavor can increase. I could step aside at any moment and let somebody else take charge. I don't have any problem. I'm not ducking work. I'm not trying to duck work. Okay. I can still get out there and make phone calls if you want me to. I can pass out flyers. But as far as the interaction we're talking about a new dimension now between enhancing the numbers of persons in the community coming into the church, because the church, I would like to see, take an active role of knowing who the students are in their communities who are aspiring to become thus and so professional.
That's right.
Who's trying to get into that. And the parents want to know, who is it that can help make my son or daughter a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer? They want to know.
That's right.
And so when they see the church actively involved in that, if you want to get numbers in your church, I think that would be a good way to do it.
That's good.
Okay.
That is very good. So, Brother Kelsey, we are so thankful tonight that you stopped by this studio to share your wonderful initiative to the people listening on the radio.
Thank
and
you
I
for
really
having
believe
me.
that, yes, well, we're glad again to have you. And we know that this can and will be a successful endeavor. It's one of those things that I have great interest for as well, to mentor young people, like a big brother type situation or a big sister type situation. But it's done under the auspices of the institution of the education. And that's important. With education being a great institution, school systems, all of that's very important. So thank you for coming in tonight. And we're going to have you to come back in a couple of months and give us a checkup on how that's going.
What I would like to do, Pastor Parker, is also, and I call him pastor because when I first met Elliot, he was pastoring a church.
That's right.
He was pastoring Reverend Al Sampson's church.
That's right.
And Reverend Al Sampson told me that, I'm sure he told you too, that he was one of the two ministers, I think, that
was ordained by
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
That's right.
And so you pastored his church,
yes,
and took over a great legacy.
Thank you.
And you preach very well too, by the way.
Thank you.
And so we've been friends ever since then.
Yes.
And what I would want to do is bring on some other guests rather than me. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm ready to move out the picture. Let's bring in brother Dr. Reverend Charles Brown.
Please.
And connect up with some more young pastors and then have them report.
I'd like for them to do that.
Your show might very well be a forum where we can keep up on this.
I'd like that. So let's shoot for February, one of the Mondays in February, to have you to come back with them or them to come back in the month of February.
They might be able. What I want them to do is to come back by themselves.
That's right.
If I'm needed, I'll come.
Okay.
But I want them to start moving on this and start contacting people and start praying for inspiration from God so that He can direct their paths.
Well, that is great. Perfect timing. So we have been blessed by Kelsey Wicks, a man full of humility, and we thank God for that. And that's something that just doesn't come around on a daily basis, to see a man of your caliber. I know you don't want to brag about it, but so great to have an humble servant, someone who's willing to pass the mantle on, get it started, plant the seeds, and allow God to water it and allow God to give the increase. But our role is important to God, and that is that we can plant seeds in people's lives and help people to become successful. So thank you for that so much.
Just one more second. I just want to reemphasize the impact that senior citizens can have. If we can have senior citizens in this country unite with senior citizens in Canada and London and Brazil and so forth, and when there's instances of mistreatment of other populations in other countries,
right,
nerve agents and chemicals, we can't tell anybody in another country what to do, but we can say in a united voice, you can't treat those people like that, because those people are connected to people here in Chicago and in London and in Canada and in Mexico and other places.
That's right.
That is the impact. And this is what I'm saying. We can recreate this image and influence and perspective on senior citizens.
Very good. We thank you again for coming in, Brother Wicks. And let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you again for this wonderful initiative to have our seniors around the country, even in North America and Canada and even in the United Kingdom, to join and be a part of this endeavor, but starting here in America to help our young people. So we ask you to continue to bless this young man, I believe, Mr. Wicks. Continue to bless him and keep him in your care as he continues to spread more and more love to our people in this country of ours in the United States. In Jesus' name, amen.
In Jesus' name, amen.
So again, we're happy that you join us tonight. Join us next week. We'll have Miss Betty Clausen, who is a very, very pivotal person in the life of Joe Dudley. As you know, the beauty college here in Chicago. She is going to be joining us via phone, I suppose, on Monday, the day before Election Day, to just share with us some great information about the field of cosmetology and how that has impacted us as African Americans. So thank you so much. And our sponsor again is Martin Casey's My Fuller Beauty company. We thank God for him, and we wish all of you all more and more blessings. See you next week.
Boldly before his throne. I can't hardly wait.